Michael's first novel, The Color of Dreams, was awarded Booklife Editor's Peak. Readers of inspirational fiction will enjoy the story of a man, an angel, and the work it takes to build happiness and fulfillment. Midwest Book Review described his writing as poetic and highly descriptive and evocative, and says libraries will find it easy to recommend to readers looking for uplifting, inspirational tales of transformation that emerge from following one's dream. His first book, The Owner's Manual to Life, How to Worry Less and Enjoy Life More, feature 100 inspirational quotes such as each day comes bearing its own gift, untie the ribbon. Ruth Ann Schubacher with short essays that help us live life with more kindness, empathy, and joy. He sends out 3 new quotes each Wednesday to subscribers worldwide. You can sign up for free by visiting his website at www.michaelzbooks.com. Michael lives in the town of Cary in North Carolina. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my joy, excitement, and honor to have on the show today, Michael. How are you doing today, Mike? It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you. Yes, it's I'm doing well. It's Sunday, November the 16th, and outside the window, the leaves are falling and it's really
Hmm.
glorious out there.
Wow, that's a good one, really. Quite exciting. We are here to sit down, virtue of internet connectivity across continent and countries, to have this conversation with you around your body of literature work. So I would say again, thank you very much for coming on.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for reaching out and for doing all the work that you do to put these interviews on and all the social media reach you do. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And Michael, we're going to get into what inspired you to write The Color of Dreams. But then, you've been a writer now for the past amazing 25 years. You just have to add 2 years to that, and you've been a writer all my life, yeah, so far. But interestingly, and you've published multiple titles, even aside from The Color of Dreams. Now, I wanted to ask you, what is your first creative spark as a writer? What is that thing that fuels you in, that gets you going on this literature journey for this long years so far, unstoppably, with your huge dedication and, tenacity and all of that? If you can run us through the foundation of your creative process and the making of this book, that would really be great.
Yes. It's interesting. You're asking about a writer's inspiration.
Hmm.
Inspiration to me comes from certainly life experience. It comes from reading. I love to read and to see how other writers come up with an idea and then make that idea come to life.
Hmm.
And 30 years ago, I had the genesis for this book, The Color of Dreams. And I was in business at the time, and I had used what's called the law of attraction. You may have heard of it.
Hmm.
And I used the law of attraction to manifest great success in my business and in what I did. And it
Hmm.
was just so easy to manifest by using the techniques of the law of attraction, visualization, goal setting, and that sort of thing. And I wanted to share it with people. I wanted to find a way that people could really learn about the idea. And I thought, what better way than a story?
Hmm.
And what better way than a unique character? And I came up with the idea of
Hmm.
a little angel that visits a man who's about to lose everything, but who has a dream. And how can he use, and the character's name is Ben, how can he use the law of attraction to make that dream come true and to persevere through all the obstacles because it's never a straight course.
Hmm.
There are always things that get in the way. So, how does he maintain faith in his dream? How does he persevere through obstacles and challenges? How does he keep imagining the end result? Well, this little character, the angel, gives him six spiritual lessons
Mm.
And that's how I came up with the idea. And it took 30 years. I kept
Wow.
writing notes and reading
Wow.
and I finally, it took about 4.5 years to write it. And here it is.
Wow. That's such an amazing journey you've had in there. Quite interesting. And I love that statement you make. What better way than a story? What better way than a unique character? And I can really do feel how unique your characters in is it. Quite interesting, quite great. And it's really lovely to get to know how you get started into writing and your little bit of background story. Quite beautiful and quite awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. And your book explores themes of transformation and redemption. How did those ideas take shape through your characters? And also, there is a spiritual undercurrent running through the colors of dream. Did you set out to write a spiritual quote unquote story? Or did that element, naturally just evolve as you wrote the story alongside?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I didn't set out to write a spiritual story. And yet, the way that the story evolved, the character and the themes of redemption, as you
Yeah,
mentioned, there's
yeah.
such a spiritual element to
Mm,
everything we do. And at the core of the color of dreams, the angel refers to the source as being the
mm,
inspiration for all our dreams. And of course, the source, the spirit of the universe, whatever you want to call it,
mm.
it's inside of all of us. So it shines through all the characters.
Yeah.
And the idea that thoughts are things, that's one of the underlying themes of the
All
book.
right.
Thoughts are things. What we think about,
Mm,
we take action on, and the actions create the results. But it all starts with a thought. And so in creating this book and developing the characters, and by the way, we'll talk a little bit later about the theme of redemption because it's such an integral part of
mm,
all of our lives and the book, and of course, transformation.
mm.
And transformation, if you look at stories, movies, books, poems,
Yeah,
you write. So you know what it's like. It's about that transformation. The hero starts
absolutely.
here. He gets a call to adventure, a call to accomplish something. And then
Mm,
he goes through a series of trials that test him and change him and transform
yeah.
him. And then he comes back to the world and he delivers the boon of his experience. And that's the hero's journey in a nutshell. And you
Mm,
see it in this book and many other stories. And yeah,
yeah. Oh, wow. I love your answer to that. That is such a pulling, very engaging, quite compelling one you've had in there. Thank you very much for sharing.
yeah.
Absolutely. And just for the sake of new viewers who are just getting to discover the color of dreams and who haven't read the book yet, who are just getting to discover it through this, interview and conversation, could you give us a sneak peek of some of the themes, some of the subject lines, message, your mission, and actually what you actually aim to achieve with this story? If you can run us through that, that would really be great. Without giving much information away, no spoilers too.
Okay, certainly, certainly. There are a lot of great lines and themes to this book. Once again, the overarching theme is the law of attraction. So
Mm,
I mentioned it earlier, thoughts are things. That's a line. Another line that I use or that the angel gives to Ben, one of the lessons is, are you in fear or are you
mm,
in faith?
mm.
And it's either if you're in fear, you're not taking action. You're painting dark scenarios of what can go wrong. And
Absolutely.
that
Mm,
stifles creativity, it stifles our action, it dampens our mood. But if we shift into faith of our dream, faith of what we're called to create, if we
mm,
shift into faith, suddenly it's easier to take action. It's easier to keep going. It's easier to match adversity with a different way around it, a different thinking of the problem, a different path. One of my favorite lines
mm,
from the book, the angel says, and this is on the line of inspiration, imagine better than the best you know.
mm,
And that's a great line because when we're trying to accomplish anything, write a book, do well at our jobs, we
Mm,
think, well, gee, what's what is my goal? What would I like to accomplish? Well, again,
yeah.
the angel, the character says, imagine better than that.
Mm,
Because with the source, all things are possible.
mm,
And you may put a lid on what you think you can do, but there's actually something even above that. Our potential is endless,
mm,
and we put the lid on our potential. So why not just imagine better than the best you know? And that's another great line. I'll just end
mm,
with this. And she also says that when you get rid of fear, you get rid of failure.
mm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. When you get rid of fear, you get rid of failure. Because
yeah.
fear is a huge distraction. It's something that tempts your confidence. It's a feature that nobody should ever nurture. It is a joy killer, a confident, destroyer. You have to put in a bit of courage, even if you feel a bit of fear in you. Quite interesting. I love your take on this. And if you have a copy of the book, I know we once showed it to the camera. I'd like you to show it again, just so we can
Okay,
see what it looks like.
certainly. I was really happy with how the cover
That's a
came out
beautiful cover.
and the designer
Colors
did,
of Dreams.
yeah, the designer did such a lovely picture. I think she really captured the magic
Mm,
and the colors of the color of dreams. Yeah.
beautiful one, really. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest challenge in switching from writing essays and reflections to weaving a fictional narrative? Let's hear from you.
Huge, 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 huge. I, I've written nonfiction in my professional business coaching for many years, and then I
Mm,
wrote The Owner's Manual to Life, which is nonfiction. Nonfiction is much easier, I have found, than writing
well,
fiction. And
yeah, I do believe that too. Yeah.
when I sat down to write The Color of Dreams, not ever having written fiction before, I realized I didn't know how to do it.
Wow.
So what I needed to do is I needed to learn how to do it. And what
Mm,
I did was I studied, I read, and I outlined, and I studied, and I made notes, copious notes on many books on how to write fiction from different angles, from how to
mm,
outline fiction to how to develop an engaging plot and an
mm,
outline, then how to write characters, learning about
yeah.
character arcs. And then the most important thing I learned, and Peter, you might find this interesting, that the best book that I read that really helped me so much was Scene and Structure. And what I learned is that I learned about what makes a compelling scene.
Mm,
And when you realize how to write a scene, you realize how to write a compelling book where, and people have told me this with The Color of Dreams, after they get to the end of
uh,
one chapter, they can't wait to go to the next chapter because this scene, the way you write a scene is the elements are simple. Number one, the character has to have a goal.
mm,
So every time you enter a new scene, a character has a goal. So the reader is alert and engaged in wondering if the character is going to reach their goal.
wow.
And then, as the scene unfolds, one of three things happen. They either reach their goal,
Mm,
or they don't reach their goal, or worse, they reach their goal, but it wasn't what they wanted. And
mm,
suddenly there's a new goal. So the way that the chapters end is that one of those three things has happened, but now there's a new goal.
mm,
And then you leave that at the end of the last chapter, which makes the reader think, well, gee, are they going to get that new goal? Or gee,
mm,
they didn't get it, or they got it and something worse happened. And
yeah.
that's the best of all. You know, they don't get the goal. And here's what happened. Now there's a problem. So now you want, well, how are they going to overcome that? And that's how all
Wow.
great literature and movies are. And it's called a cliffhanger. We all know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I I didn't know that. And so I had to learn all these things. And then I had to
Wow.
put them all together into a compelling
Mm.
story. And then, of course, I had to write 14 drafts of this book.
Wow. Wow.
I,
14 drafts.
I tell you one other thing. You know, Michael Crichton, the writer who wrote
Yeah, his name rings a bell.
Jurassic Park. He was a very famous writer probably 2 decades ago.
Mm.
As I was writing my 10th draft of The Color of Dreams, I was so discouraged. I thought I was a terrible writer. I can't get it right after
Wow.
10. I read a quote by Michael Crichton, and Michael Crichton, this famous author who made millions of dollars, said, he said, I found it discouraging that after the 12th draft of my book, I still had a long way to go. And that normalized for me the writing process. I thought, okay, great. Maybe I'm not such a failure. Maybe I just have to keep
Wow.
going, which I did.
Wow. Wow. This is such an exciting story to hear. Quite inspiring as well, if you ask me. Quite interesting, really. And I love how all of these things are interwoven and weaved into your storytelling quite beautifully and very great. Thank you very much for sharing. And I want to move further, Michael, asking you about your approach to storytelling. Did you approach your characters with a therapist's curiosity or, wanting to understand their inner world, or more of a storyteller shaping a journey? How best would you describe yourself in that scenario?
Yeah, I would say more of a storyteller shaping a character. In terms of motivations, if you want to use a therapist's insights, the insights were more driven by personal experience over, many years and years in relationships and years in chasing goals and years in having obstacles and years of having to persevere. So I injected a lot of my own experience
Mm,
into this. And then, of course, one of the things is in terms of the fictional narrative,
yeah.
you have to think about the themes, and the
Mm.
theme of redemption, as an example, was, and it was very big, but I think we'll get into that later.
Quite amazing, really. I love your answer to this. Really beautiful and quite awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. And one of the most interesting to me as a writer, Michael, is to sit back and listen to readers' feedback. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be quite complex in its entirety is how it gets interpreted by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes you would find some reader who would perfectly, completely, and wholly understand the message the author intended. And sometimes you would find some other readers who would be close to getting the message that the author intended. Sometimes you will find some readers who would be far away from getting the message that the author intended, say like several kilometers or miles away from getting it. And most of the times, you would find some readers who would entirely interpret the book upside down and, not even get the message. And, as we keep getting different people interpreting works in their own understanding, I wanted to ask you, how does that make you feel as a writer if you've ever been in that situation whereby people get to interpret your work differently than you intended? How does that make you feel as a storyteller?
You know, it's hard. You know, reader feedback, if they like the book, everything's good. I'm fine. They get
Yeah.
it. Good for them. Those people who don't like it or don't resonate with it, and then
Mm,
of course with social media and reviews and an
yeah.
enemy, they can just lambaste your book, or nothing's worse than a
Yeah.
2 or 3 star. I just want to have a sit down and have coffee with them and really talk to them about it. But the bottom line is this: as a writer, my job is to do and write the best book that I can. That's my
Mm,
job. And
mm,
then introduce it to the world. And then my job is done. Now, I'm thankful that many reviewers have loved the book. As an example, Booklife, which is a subsidiary of Publishers Weekly, they
yeah.
gave it they gave it their editor's pick. That's confirmation. That
Fantastic.
means that all the work that I put in
Mm,
was great. And the book just won the Spiritual Fiction Award with the IAN Award, which is the International Authors Network. They're a really,
Wow.
and I that happened 2 days ago. I just got word on that.
Wow.
So that's great as well. But the bottom line is everybody is different. Not everybody's going to like this genre. There are genres that I don't care for. So even if the book was fabulous, if I don't like that genre or it doesn't resonate with me,
Mm.
then I may not like it. But
Yeah.
that's just how it is. You do the best you can, you put it out there, you hope that people are kind.
Mm. That's a beautiful one, really. I love your take on that. Quite awesome and quite amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you because you have an amazing background in therapy. Now, how has your background in therapy and coaching shaped the way you approach storytelling, if in any way, especially in how you develop your characters and emotional depth? And I mean the emotional depth in your writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done a lot of business coaching with business professionals, and
Mm.
I use as a framework the law of attraction. I use as a framework goal setting and visualization, which are so very important in life and business.
Yeah,
And that very, very much inform the writing. In terms of therapy and my background as a therapist, as you know, there's a core relationship in this
yeah,
book. Ben
yeah.
and his wife M, and of course their family, and then the trouble
Mm,
that they get into. And in terms of from a therapy standpoint, working with couples, there are a lot of dynamics in that relationship. I think prime among them are misunderstanding. And
mm,
there's a great line in there that I learned when I was becoming a therapist. In fact, this was the title of a book, and I used it in my book. Ben
mm.
says to Emily toward the end when things are very, very bad,
Wow.
and she wants to break up with him for good. And he says, "But Emily, I love you." And she says, "But Ben, love isn't enough."
Mm,
And I love that line. And that comes straight from my therapy background because sometimes, love isn't enough.
mm,
There has to be compatibility. You have to look in the same direction. You have to have each other's back. You have to respect one another. There's so much in the
mm,
dynamic of a relationship that needs to be there for a relationship to work in
mm,
addition to love. So I would think that's one way that therapy played into this.
mm. That's an amazing one, really. This is really beautiful, and I love hearing your take on this. Your answers to these questions are quite compelling and really inviting. Thank you very much for sharing. Absolutely. And just apart from The Color of Dreams, do you have any other works that you've authored or say currently working on?
Yes, yes. My next book, I'm going to go back to nonfiction in a way, but with a heavy fictional aspect. It's going to be historical fiction.
Oh,
And my family, my last name is Zajackzkowski. My family is from Warsaw, Poland. My mother's side is from
mm,
Britain. And in at the beginning of World War II in 1939, when Warsaw and Poland was invaded by both the Nazis and the Russians, my father escaped Warsaw, Poland, and made it to Great Britain, where he fought in the RAF, and that's where I
mm.
met my mother. But the rest of my family were prisoners in Warsaw under the
Wow.
occupation, and my grandfather and my uncle gave their lives in the Warsaw Uprising. So my next book, and I'm doing research on that now. I'm flying to Poland next year to meet with relatives and
Mm,
various museums, is to do research and to write that story about
mm.
my family's experience during the occupation.
Wow. That sounds like a very compelling family history. That is really a pulling one and quite going to be emotional as well.
Yeah.
I really hope that goes well. Hopefully, when that is up, we'd love to have you back on the show to talk about it. That would be
Thank you.
fantastic.
Well, thank you. I will.
I would like you to keep me posted about the process of that.
Yeah, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, it is. It is. From that little explanation and backdrop, it is really a lot going on in there. Quite
Yeah,
interesting. Thank you. It's beautiful writing all these stories, and I really do think this is one of the beauty of preservation, having to have history preserved for the coming children, the coming generation.
yeah,
Sometimes I do wish, and I so much wish that I could have a bit of the story of my grandfather, a story of my great grandfather. What kind of life did they live? What was their occupation? Who did they get married to? Things of that nature. It's really, really beautiful. If I could have a book written back then that can be preserved, that I can get to know more about my great grandfather, I'll be very excited to learn about it. If there's something I can learn from his feature or characterization, if there's something I can adjust to myself, if there's something I can pick up to stay inspired, motivated, it's really, really important that we have family history, stories being told. Very, very important. It's something I love wholeheartedly.
yeah, yeah,
Abs-
absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that lovely description. Now, I wanted to ask you, are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing this book and also ever since it got published, if there's any?
We're going to need a whole nother show, Peter.
I
I'll
know
just say,
that.
I'll just say this. This is the first and only book that I've self-published.
Yeah.
All my other books have been published by a traditional publisher where they handle everything.
Mm,
And in this situation with self-publishing, suddenly everything is on me and
mm,
not just limited to hiring and finding a good developmental editor and then
yeah.
a good line editor, but more importantly, the minutia
Mm,
of let's just say formatting and
yeah.
uploading and getting
Yeah.
approved the ebook and the hardcover and the soft cover and the wrap of the hardcover and getting it on and
Mm,
determining which publishers to go to. Do I use
yeah.
Amazon for everything? Do I use Ingram Spark? And who distributes the ebook? How do
Yeah.
I go wide and get it everywhere with Kobo and Apple and Barnes and Noble, or do I stick to Am? And then, oh boy, I tell you, I also have an audio book of
Mm,
this made, and I had to find the actor to do that. And Nick did an amazing job
mm,
doing the audio on this book. But even getting Amazon to get the right files, and do I go so? Bottom line is there is a lot. My advice to you, if you are thinking of self-publishing a book, is to get help. Um,
mm,
Readsy is a great place. Readsy.com. Yeah, I found my developmental editor there. I found my line editor there.
mm,
There you can join various organizations like the Authors Guild or the Alliance of Independent Publishers. I mean, there are a lot where you can get help and you can get a team and you can interview people and you can get people
mm,
who will fit in within your budget and have already been there and done that.
mm,
I just want to write. I don't want to do any of that. And worse, I don't want to market. And
mm,
nother,
mm.
that's a whole nother, barrel. So yeah,
That's an amazing one, really. Quite interesting and quite wholesome. It's really great to hear about that from you. Thank you very much for sharing. Now, I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for writers who are still struggling with publishing a book, and where can readers get a copy of your book from?
Yeah. So I would say again, get help if you are if you're a new trying to get your work out there. And there are, depending upon how much money you have, you can hire
Yeah.
hybrid publishers, whereby you could hire um, BookBaby as an example, and they'll do all that for you. And you pay them $5,000, $6,000,
Hmm.
and they will do all the work in the background. And so you
Interesting.
can do a hybrid situation too. In terms of getting my book, yeah, I did go wide. So the book is available everywhere online. You can go to Barnes and Noble, you can go to Apple, you can go to Kobo, you can go to Amazon, of course. And you can get a format, you can get an ebook, you can get a paperback, you can get a
Mm.
hardcover as well. You can also go to my website, which is michaelzbooks.com. And on the book page, you can see some options to get a discount on both the paperback and the hardcover. You can buy direct from the website. It's then shipped from Ingram Spark. And then, of
Fantastic.
course, the audiobook is available everywhere as well. You can get that on Barnes and Noble. And I'll just tell you right now that I have reduced the price
Mm.
for
Wow.
this interview. Anyone listening,
Oh,
you
that's
can
good.
get yeah, you can get the ebook now for $4.99. And
Um,
you can get the audiobook for $7.99, which is a great price. And the audio, you can listen to a sample. Nick does just a wonderful job. He even made me cry when I heard him do it.
wow.
There was a section in the book that's quite sad, and
Mm.
the way he did the voices, the way he did the emotion, he was perfect. He is the character Ben. It's uncanny. I got very lucky. It's a great recording.
Mm. That's an amazing one, really. I love your description of that. That's a very pulling and great one. Thank you very much for sharing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Michael's The Color of Dreams directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today to sit down and have this conversation around this beautiful body of literature that you've created. Thank you very much for this amazing artwork. Very pulling, so compelling, extremely inviting and engaging. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate this.
Peter, thank you again for having me on the show and for all the work you and Kenny and all the team do in the background. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure as well.